You surface from the underground at Piccadilly Circus.
Mind the gap.
Making your way through the glittering lights of London's West End, you take a turn down a quaint-looking street into the notorious neighborhood of Soho. The lights are dimming, the crowd is buzzing, and you've just tuned in to the best seat in the house. Welcome to The Big Smoke, a variety show podcast. I'm Kevin Bennett, and I'll be your guide through this experience of comedy, conversation, and community. Today's episode is a little different. Before we head into summer, we thought we'd take another peek behind one of your favorite recurring segments here on The Big Smoke, Sean Clark the Mudlark's latest find. Over the past 2 years, we ventured together to the Thames where Sean has regularly shared his remarkable discoveries, objects that, as he likes to say, have found him on the banks of the River Thames. But what really is mudlarking? Who are the people spending their days searching the foreshore, and what keeps them coming back, tide after tide? So today, Sean is joined by fellow mudlarks Sam Caetoven and Angela Bridge for a conversation about the wonderfully eclectic objects and equally eclectic community that have emerged around London's tidal river. From ancient stone tools and Roman artifacts to 17th century trade tokens and forgotten everyday objects, we'll discover how a walk along the Thames can uncover thousands of years of this city we call the Big Smoke. The tide is out. So let's venture on down to the foreshore and meet the mudlarks of London's River Thames. All right, welcome to the Big Smoke. We've got a gaggle of mudlarks here today. I don't know what the collective noun is. Has anyone thought of a collective noun for mudlarks?
Someone said a muddle.
A muddle of mudlarks. That's a good one. I like that. So today we've got a muddle of mudlarks. I'm very excited to take a little peek behind the curtain from one of our most popular segments, which is Sean Clark the Mudlark's latest find. And today we actually have 3 people from the mudlarking community, and we're gonna dig into the whole world of mudlarking. What is it? How do you do it? Talk about some of your favorite finds. So let's just start with, we've got Sean, Sam, and Angela. Would it be possible to start maybe with you, Sean? Just introduce yourself, how long you've been mudlarking for.
I'm Sean Clark Mudlark, and I've been mudlarking for 5.5 years. And I got into mudlarking after my beautiful wife Trudy passed away in 2017. I was lost for 2.5 years and then stumbled upon mudlarking, and it's changed my life.
Love it. Okay, well, we'll dig more into how it's changed your life and what your favorite aspects of it are in a bit. But Angela?
Well, I got into it because my daughter-in-law Amy was going for a walk with her brother and someone who had a mudlarking licence, and invited me along, and I hadn't got a clue what mudlarking was. So I went along, and she found an almost complete clay pipe, and I thought, I like the look of this, and I went home and I bought a licence, and I've been mudlarking now for, this is my 5th year.
Wow, okay, very good. And Sam?
I'm Sam Caetoven. I've been mudlarking for 8 years, and I took up mudlarking really as a way of taking full advantage of these beautiful long summer evenings like we're enjoying now. So I was a fossil hunter before I was a mudlark, and I still fossil hunt, but working in the city meant it was just too difficult to be able to get out and fossil hunt in those lovely evenings. And I looked for something closer to home, found mudlarking, and found myself having to choose between 2 tide-based activities, which is sometimes a bit of a dilemma, and sometimes I'll do both in one day. In
terms of the difference between mudlarking and fossil hunting, is it just the area, or is it the way that you hunt that makes it different?
I'd say it's both. I mean, with fossil hunting, you're looking at deep time, so you're looking at the traces of life millions of years ago. And with mudlarking, you're looking for artefacts, traces of mankind. So they're very different environments. And with fossils, you tend to know what you're looking for in a particular area because of the geography. Whereas in London, it's mudlarking on the Thames, everything's jumbled together. And whilst some areas might be known for particular types of find. Anything can turn up anywhere. It really is. Just, you never know what you're going to get. And then that's quite exciting. But I have to say, I do find the foreshore a bit harder to read than when I'm fossil hunting.
For any listeners who aren't London-based, or for those who even are listening from London and they're thinking, mudlark, I've never heard this before, or it's maybe I've heard the term, but I don't know what it is. Just what is mudlarking?
So I normally say it's searching the banks of the beautiful River Thames, searching for things that have either been lost or thrown away over the last 2,000 years.
And where does anyone know where the word came from? Mudlarking?
I mean, historically, it was a term used for some of the poorest in society who literally scavenged for anything of value, scrap metal, old rope, and anything that they could try and resell. So things lost from boats or dropped in the river. And it was people who were absolutely desperately poor, and they were doing it to survive. And the term kind of got recoined for, I suppose we could call ourselves amateur archaeologists, when people, I guess, in the early 20th century sort of rediscovered the idea that you could go out as an amateur and look for artefacts on the Thames foreshore. So it kind of got recoined at that point. But, the transition from it being impoverished poor people to being sort of amateur archaeologists like we are now was quite a long process. When they were dredging the river, stuff was turning up, and it was, people realised there were things there, and it was going off to antique dealers and so on. So there was it's varied over time, I guess.
And do mudlarks use tools like metal detectors or anything else? Or I guess, what's the process, Angela? How do you
Well, where I go mainly, you can't use anything other than your eyes. It's eyes only.
And that's the law, or is that just...
That is the rules of the PLA.
I see.
That's mainly on the North Shore. On the South Bank, you can use a scraper or a trowel and go down to, is it 7 centimetres?
7.5 centimetres,
Yeah.
3 inches in old money.
Yeah, you're allowed to scrape there.
Okay.
And you're also allowed to metal detect over there. People who are in the Society of Mudlarks, there's usually around 50 of them at any one time, are allowed to scrape and detect on the North Bank as well.
And let's just, for anyone who doesn't know, the PLA means?
Port of London Authority. They issue the licences, one of which you have to have before you can even think about going mudlarking.
So that was the other question I had is, I've heard, you need a license for this. And how many, do we know how many people are licensed at any given time?
Around 4,000?
Yeah, there's an upper limit on the number of permits available, which is 4,000. But so that's how many permits are in issue, standard permits. But the number of times that people actually make use of those permits is quite variable. Some people might just come down to London maybe once or twice a year to try it out, and other people will go, at least once or twice a week. It's quite variable, and each permit lasts a year. And
let's just go through the process a little bit. So you've got your license, you've made a discovery. How common is it at least for the three of you? How often on any given day do you find something that is worth holding on to?
It's harder now than it was 5.5 years ago. Sometimes I don't find anything, but we're a community, and invariably someone will find something of significance that day, and we get to see that find. But when I started, you could guarantee to find a beautiful trade bead or a hammered coin or something on each lark, but now it's getting a lot harder.
And so what's the process when somebody's found that? What do they have to do? I know there's a process of having to report the report the object.
Anything over 200 years old, you're supposed to report to your local FLO, which is your fines liaison officer. And the person we all go to in London is Stuart. And you hand them in, he makes records of them, and they get put on a database of the British Museum.
Oh, okay.
If they're treasure, I as yet have not found any official treasure. Everything is treasure to me, but
yeah.
It then gets into a more lengthy process, and it has to be sent off to the coroner, and it can take a couple of years to find out whether you're going to get it back or not. But treasure is anything precious metal, is it?
It's been extended recently to make sure that items from non-precious metal that are
Unique
still...
items,
Yeah.
yeah.
Now we've got the kind of logistics of it. Let's hear about Sean, you talked about it being a community, meeting up with people for a lark on any given day. Let's talk about like literally how you do it. Do you each have your own unique methods? I heard you before we started recording talking about wanting to have knee pads, and what's the sort of process, gloves, knee pads. How long are you in one area before you move around? Sam, why don't you tell us a little bit about your process, as it were?
My process is probably a little bit different from Angela and Sean because I've got some visual impairment, so I can't really do the hands and knees thing that some people do because I just can't see at that distance. So I tend to, you'll probably sort of see me in an inverted L shape where I'm sort of bent over with a straight back, sort of staring at the floor from about a metre and trying to take things in at that distance. And I'm a bit itinerant. I move around a bit while I'm looking, but sometimes if I find a good spot that reads well, then I'll have a good look at it and take my time over it because I sort of need to absorb an area and digest it to be able to see what's there. I'm not quite as quick as other people, but and I move around the foreshore a bit. I get to quite a few different spots. I did have a favourite spot which isn't available to mudlarks anymore now, sadly, and that was my home on the foreshore for a good 6 years. So I'm a bit of a nomad now, but I'm finding different things, and I still find things. And actually, I think probably the best thing is that I'm still happy with quite small finds. So even if I find like a marble or something, there's still pleasure in finding just sort of such a simple, joyful object. So even if I don't find coins, which I almost never do, I'm still just really happy with what I've got because I don't really feel like the objects or you go out to look for the objects, but I think being on the foreshore is more about just the headspace and the time and the being in the moment, to be honest. So I think I always find myself, even if I don't find anything else.
I love that. Angela, what's your process? Do you have any specific techniques?
I suppose mainly it's on my hands and knees crawling around, hence my comment about the knee pads earlier. Yeah. And you only find tiny things, like Sam was saying, if you're close to the ground. Yeah. So that's my preferred method of searching. Or standing in the water and watching the waves bring things in, or watching the waves recede and then maybe managing to find a trade token or something in the mud that's revealed before another wave comes over it.
Okay, so that's
so
really
either the
timing,
edge of the water in my wellies or crawling around.
Oh, I like that. Okay. Sean, what's your... I don't think I've ever heard of your techniques.
I do a bit of everything, really. You can read the foreshore. The river sorts things by size and weight, and I always like to be the first one on the shore. And there's like strata lines of the heavy stuff, and then the smaller shingle beneath it. So the first thing I do will crawl along those strata lines in the smaller shingle on my hands and knees. It could be 100 metres long, each line, and I'm looking for dice and beads and small things that would nestle in the small shingle. Then I move on as the tide comes out to the flatter bits by the river. Again, like Angela was saying, the boats go by, the propellers sort of churn the mud, and literally on a wave there could be something thrown in. But you have to be quick because within 5 or 6 seconds of it landing there and you looking at it, the next wave's going to take it back.
Wow. I was just thinking, are mudlarks unusually good at those Where's Wally or Where's Waldo in Canada? I was thinking you should enter competitions of the Where's Wally books and just there it is, each page, because that's sort of what it is. When I see pictures, or sometimes if you follow any of you guys on Instagram, and I encourage people who are listening to do that, because you'll see the beautiful pictures and the stories of the objects, but also sometimes people do, there'll be a picture or a video of all the pebbles and the mud and everything, and then it will slowly zoom in, and how sort of at what point do you recognize the object? And it really is, it's amazing sometimes. Takes me a long time to find.
Well, me too sometimes.
Yeah.
Sometimes I spot it straight away, but other times I'm thinking, where is it?
Your eyes must be exhausted by the end of a session. I was really intrigued, Sam. You were saying, by the end of it, whether I find an object or not, I often find myself. And Sean, you were talking about how much you've gotten out of this community. Let's talk a little bit more just about, you've said on our previous segment, Sean, that it's a spiritual experience for you. What do each of you get from it in the larger sense? There's a passion for history, obviously. There's a community, which I'd love to hear more about. But if you can put it into words, what's your favorite aspect of it? Or what do you mean when you say, Sam, that you find yourself, even if you don't find an object? How does searching for objects help you do that, if that makes sense?
I'm quite an introverted person, so I think I find it quite comfortable being on the foreshore, where you can sort of still hear the world going on around you. You can hear people, at a pub above you on the river wall or something, having a lovely time, or some, a busker sort of floating across the water from outside Tate Modern or something. But you're on the beach and most people don't notice you and you don't really have a lot of sound. And instead of being sort of overwhelmed by all of the sensory stuff that the city throws at you, you hear the water and you can smell the water. There's like an ozone-y sort of smell when a wave goes past, and you notice that there's crows looking for clams and there's geese picking, algae off the river walls and things, and you sort of got this wildlife around you and the sound of the water and the light reflecting on the water, and the city's just kind of a little background hum, and you're looking at the ground and you have to take in what's going on around you. So it's sort of really sensual in a different way that sort of being in a busy city is. And so you zone out of things and just literally focus on the ground and focus on what you're looking for. And you're not paying attention to all the noise in your head anymore. And I actually find the same if I'm going fossil hunting, even when I'm just driving to wherever I'm going, that, my brain
switches off.
Well, it doesn't so much switch off. I think that all of the stuff that, the overthinking and the noise in your brain from day-to-day life kind of disappears into the background, but it's still there. And I think you almost sort of subconsciously process some of that stuff, and you find that the things that have been, that have been bothering you or that you've been dwelling on just kind of resolve themselves just by you allowing them to go into the background. And I always feel better coming off the river, even if I've not found anything, I always feel better for it.
It's definitely a mindful thing. And especially if you're sort of in the flow, you can shut off everything else and, like you say, unravel things maybe in the background that while you're searching. It's definitely a peaceful thing, unless there's loads of people around. And then I can enjoy it in a different way. It's quite a sociable thing and it's quite fun to see other people's finds, and you can have a laugh and maybe go for a drink afterwards. So there's two sides to it, really. There's the mindfulness and then the social side.
Yeah, I was thinking about comparing it to other things, whether it's meditation or listening to music or whatever, different types of, as you were describing, the sort of mindfulness of it. And there's something really beautiful about how simple it is, but yet you also have to really focus. You can't just completely tune out because you're focusing on, you're really using your brain to look through like the Where's Wally to find those objects, and they might be caked in mud, or they might be shining on the surface, they might be bigger, they might be absolutely tiny. So there's something really unique about, I can't think of anything else that compares to it in terms of what it requires from your brain as you're doing it. It's really interesting. Sean, anything to add from you?
As Sam was saying about it being a magical place on the river, I'd done a night lark last summer, and I think I was the only one there at that stage before Angela came. And you're on the river, it's pitch black on the river, you've got your head torch, you've got the lights of London, which are bright, and I just turned my head torch off and sat there for about 10-15 minutes just looking at the place. It was absolutely beautiful. And
the reflections on the water are gorgeous.
Yeah, the reflections and the lights on the bridges. But where you are was just wonderfully magic. Just took some time just sitting there. So
the last World Cup was a good example of that. I was on the foreshore on my own and England were playing. And I found this beautiful dragon on a stove tile. And as I pulled it out of the mud, this huge roar from the pub above happened, and I was there, and I felt like everyone was just,
Oh my gosh.
applauding my find, and it was such a special moment on my own, but with the people above me, I felt like they were joining in, if you know what I mean. It was really good.
Well, I have to say, when I first, how I discovered this community and that this exists at all. I mean, I've been living in London now for 8 years, but it was only maybe 2 years ago that I even knew it existed. It was because I set myself a New Year's kind of resolution that I thought, I'm not doing enough things, activities in London. There's so much that London has to offer. I go to plays and music sometimes, but I really want to take advantage of the city. So I said to myself, I'm going to do one thing per week. It could be free, it could be an exhibition, it could be whatever. And so that's how I stumbled upon at the I think it was the Waterman's Hall, the Lighterman and Waterman's Hall, and a couple of years ago. And I remember Sean at his table telling a story of one of the coins that he had found. And I was really struck by also the desire to tell the story of, especially because, Sean, you have a passion for trade tokens, which we'll talk about and we've heard about as well on the podcast. And these are people who existed who we don't hear about in the history books. They're not the kings and queens on your coins. And I was really struck by the desire to tell these people's stories, almost, bringing them to life in a way, bringing them back to life in a way. And there was something really beautiful about that. So let's go into some of our, one other thing before we talk about the objects, I just want to mention, because I think people who aren't from London won't maybe think about this or realize this, but what makes the Thames special in terms of, first of all, it's a tidal river. So that sounds obvious maybe to some people, but can somebody explain, maybe Angela, what does that mean as opposed to another river that you might be in another city that isn't?
Well, basically there's 2 tides a day and the water levels go up and down accordingly. Everyone has tide tables. We all know when low is. So you arrive at the river a couple of hours before the very low tide, search as the water recedes, and then maybe for a bit as it comes back in to look for things. And there's 2,000 years of human history, more with Neolithic hand axes that we might hear about more in a minute. So yeah, you basically follow the water out and back in again.
And that's what I sort of hadn't thought about as to what makes it even possible to mudlark on the Thames compared to maybe the Seine in Paris or another, old city that probably has lots of objects, but the river doesn't, flow in and out every day. So let's talk about a bit of our some of our favorite objects. I'm going to start with Sam because I thought it would be fun to go, how far back can we go? And I know you have one object that is like shockingly far back, which is the hand axe. Let's take a look at that, and maybe you can describe it for us and tell us the story of that.
So the hand axe, to somebody who perhaps didn't know about stone tools, they might just think it's another pebble. It's a piece of flint. It's a kind of got a sort of an orangey brown patina to it, and it could easily just be mistaken for a pebble. But if
it's about 2-3 inches across.
It's sort of smaller than the palm of a hand, and it's shaped with a little bit of a point at one end, and you can see that it's sort of got some bits chipped away from it, and it's actually an Acheulean hand axe, so it's lower Paleolithic in age.
What does that mean? Where are we talking?
That's round
here?
about 500,000 years old.
Wow.
Now,
it wasn't even made by the same species of human as us. We hadn't evolved yet.
This is so wild. So now you found this recently?
I found this, maybe 2.5 years ago.
Okay. And whereabouts are you able to reveal whereabouts you found it by the river? Or is that I know sometimes it's okay if you can't. It's okay if you can't. Central London?
On the beach.
On the beach somewhere.
It wasn't central London. It was a little bit upstream from central London.
Okay.
And it was in an area where there's a lot of flint, and it's kind of a real jumble of stuff. So we've talked about how the river's quite arbitrary. It's an area where stuff from the river that has been dredged out to improve the river channels has been dumped historically. Okay. So it's all material from the Thames, but not necessarily from that originally from that particular location. And this hand axe could have arrived in the river in gravels. So basically the Thames as a river has migrated south over time. It used to come out into the North Sea, kind of up in Norfolky sort of area. In fact, ancestrally it was part of the River Rhine before we were a separate island from the rest of Europe. And a species of hominid called Homo habiliensis had migrated out of Africa and across Europe, and they made stone tools like this hand axe. And it would have been, I guess it was like the Swiss Army knife of 500,000 years ago. I mean, I still kind of shiver a bit when I hold that, because I was the first modern human to ever hold that. And it's a fossil and an artifact in one. It's for somebody who fossil hunts and mudlarks, it's perfect.
Yeah. Wow, it's unbelievable to me.
Yeah, I mean, and it would have been a multi-tool. It could have been used to cut, to slice, to scrape, to bore holes. You know, it would have been used in preparation of meat and skins and everything that they needed for their day-to-day life. You know, I mean, you know, we've only been using metals in like the past 4,000 or 5,000 years. Not even that. I mean, you know, stone technology goes way, way back, but that's about as old as a man-made object gets in this country.
Now, some of the objects stand out because they might be a shiny coin or they might be a bright color. Was this covered in mud or anything, or was it because it's a sort of a light brown? It might be similar colors to other things. I'm just wondering how you kind of discovered it.
If I'd not literally walked right over it, if it had not been literally on the line I was taking on the foreshore, I wouldn't have seen it. This is a piece of beach that is made up entirely of flint pebbles. I mean, there are quite literally hundreds of thousands of flint pebbles on this beach, and if I'd not pretty much walked straight over it, I wouldn't have spotted that amongst the others.
Let's do your second object, Sam, because I'm thinking we're sort of moving forward through history. I know you've got a Roman object that's really special. Tell us about that.
I've got the other item I brought along today it's a Roman intaglio. So an intaglio is a small gemstone. This one is carnelian, and it's been carved into, and it would have been worn in a ring, a bit like a signet ring, and it would have been used as the owner's seal on a document. You know, much as you might seal, say, a wedding invitation with a stamp and some sealing wax. And they were quite a common piece of jewellery for a Roman, and they would usually have gods or images of animals or something on them, which would be quite generic and wouldn't tell you anything about the owner. But this one has actually got what's called a panoply of arms on it, and that basically means it's the armour and the weaponry of a Roman soldier. So it must have been owned by a Roman soldier.
So how old are we talking here? Like
We're talking
1,000, 2,000?
Like 1st, 2nd, maybe 3rd century.
Wow. And just to describe it, so it's this beautiful red color, and it's, I mean, not much more than my fingernail, my pinky fingernail. Very, very small. How did you discover that? Was that just sitting on the top of the pebbles and stones?
Yeah, it was just sitting on the top. And it was found in a particular location, and it was definitely something I was on the lookout for in that location. And I waited a long time to find one, and I found this one not long before the location in question was basically closed off. It's completely lost now.
Okay.
So
well saved.
Yeah.
Are there reasons why certain areas get closed off? Is that to do with mudlarking in history?
No,
or is it
it's
other
not to
things
do with
that are being built?
mudlarking. It's in this case, it was just due to the river walls becoming so degraded from erosion that they needed to do repairs that involved an extensive amount of sort of rebuilding. But you can probably tell from my accent that I'm from the northeast. I literally grew up on the Roman wall. Hadrian's Wall. We don't even call it Hadrian's Wall. It's just the wall in Newcastle. And I used to cross the Roman wall every day to go to primary school, and to find something that would have belonged to a soldier and might, you know, I grew up walking in the footsteps of Roman soldiers, and now I've got something that was probably owned and worn by a Roman soldier, and it's the perfect intaglio for me to have found. I just feel it feels really personal. It feels like it found me very much. So
What's the red stone? Do you know what the stone is?
it's a stone called carnelian. So it's,
Okay.
I mean, the ring was probably made in the UK, but the carnelian could easily have been imported. I mean, it's an artifact that tells us not just that it belonged to a Roman soldier, but that, you know, the kinds of trades that were going on. You know, back when the Romans were in Britain, you know, they were bringing pottery and stone and all of their culture with them. So it's, you know, it's tells you something about what was going on with that vast empire and how they traded too.
Well, and for the size of it, it's amazing the detail of the image. Just tell us what you can make out of the image that's been carved into the top of it.
So, I mean, it's actually quite crudely carved, which isn't unusual for an intaglio. Some of them are really finely carved, and this one isn't. But it's there's basically like a couple of stripes, marks on the left-hand side, and they would have been the soldier's greaves, so that would have been on his legs as armour. And then in the centre, you've got what would have been the breastplate, and you've got a shield and a helmet and a spear on there. So it's basically all of a Roman soldier's armour. And Romans had to buy their own armour. It wasn't provided to them. So, and they utterly depending on it in doing the work that they did. And I mean, if anybody went to the exhibition that was on at the British Museum a couple of years ago about Roman soldiers, it told you all about, you know, what that lifestyle was, and about the fact that sort of when you signed up, you were in for, I think it was like 30 years or something, and then you'd get this fantastic pension if you made it that far. So it was, I mean, it was genuinely a career choice. They deliberately took soldiers from all across the empire and sent them to completely different parts of the empire. So you like the soldiers that were stationed on the Roman wall would have been from places like Syria, and they were from Belgium, and they were from all over the empire, anywhere except locally, because they didn't want anybody to have any local bias. If you come from a completely different part of the empire, then you're perfectly happy to, you know, to fight off the tribes in the north, because you don't know them. They're just they're as foreign as you are. So it's you know, I mean, it's smart stuff.
It's an amazing find. I mean, both of them are really, really incredible, but the size, I'm always impressed when there's these tiny objects that are intact and so detailed. Beautiful. Thank you so much. Now let's move over to Angela and take a look at some of your finds. I see something very shiny and smooth, and you've told me this is the Prince Rupert's drop. Yes? Tell us about that.
Well, it's made of glass, and basically it would have been made by dropping molten glass into cold water, which meant that it would solidify very, very quickly. Oh, wow. And in so doing, the bulbous end, I mean, it looks like a tadpole for people listening, the bulbous end would have been very dense because it would have solidified very quickly. And as it dropped through the water, it made the tail.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And because the bulbous end is so dense, you can hit it with a hammer and it won't break. But if you as much as snip the end off the tail, the whole thing then explodes. A theory of which I am not going to test
You're not
out.
Try.
But that's what it is. And it has no useful purpose other than to entertain people.
So what year are we talking here about?
Well, they've been known since Roman times.
Wow.
This one probably dates to around the same time as onion bottles, which is 17th century, I think.
Okay.
Because the colour of the glass and the bubbles and things inside match the onion bottle glass. And they were introduced to this country before that. Prince Rupert of Germany, I think, brought some to Charles II's court to present them as a gift and as a novelty value. And that's all they are, really. They're just novelty
just kind of
value.
Decorative? People put them on
well,
display?
Decorative, but also to make people gasp. You know, he'd bring them to the court, show how it couldn't be broken,
I see.
then nip the end off, and the whole thing would explode and everybody would be amazed.
And there'd just be like glass everywhere.
Tiny
Tiny
bits
of glass
of
everywhere.
glass.
Because what's amazing to me is the sort of tail end of the tadpole, so to speak, is so thin and small. It's amazing to me that it
survived
is
at all.
intact.
Well, Sean was there. I can't say I found this because Sean spotted it first. But his hands at that point were full of a huge...
You knocked him over, pushed him over.
No, they were full of a huge horn. And he said, "Oh, what's that Angela, pick it up. And I thought, cheeky bugger, all right. So I picked it up and I said, oh, it's made of glass, Sean. He said, oh, you can have it. It looks like a bit of scrap or something. I said, are you sure? It's beautiful. He said, no, you can have it. So I took it home. And unbelievably, my son said, I said, look what I found, Wills. He said, yeah, that's a Prince Rupert's drop. And I was absolutely amazed. I thought I was going to spend ages trying to find out what this thing was. But they had a renaissance a couple of years ago. You can go onto YouTube and find all sorts of videos showing these in clamps being screwed, and not breaking.
Oh, I see.
So he knew exactly what it was even before I did.
You might have mentioned this and it just went through me without hitting me, but is it a specific type of glass? You said it's molten glass.
I don't think so. It's just molten glass dropped into cold water, and they've been glassmakers have known about this phenomenon for centuries.
So it's just the sort of speed with which it solidifies.
I think this one must have been in the mud for a long, long time.
Wow.
And a wave must have just dropped it as we were leaving the foreshore, weren't we?
Yeah.
And Sean spied it.
Any regret, Sean?
Now I'm
Is that
its
one of your
custodian.
regrets?
I'm very, very pleased for her.
You're very pleased. That's good. I'm
He
glad.
generously said I could keep it, even when I told him what it was.
I was happy with my large horn.
Is this something that you've, in the Mudlark community, do you know other people who found that, or is that pretty rare?
I don't know
Prince
anybody
Rupert's
has
drop.
found one. No,
Wow.
I'm terrified of it actually exploding, to be honest. But
Keep it in that box.
yeah.
That's beautiful. I love that. Why don't we talk about, Angela, one of your other ones? Which one do you want to talk about? We've got...
I think the other one probably would be the apothecary bottle, also made of
Okay.
glass.
Tell us about that. I wish I knew some of my Romeo and Juliet. It's gone. It's gone out of the apothecary lines.
Yeah, no, I can't remember either. Well, this was found on a very low spring tide last year. And when it's very low, a lot of people descend on the area that we go to because it's an area you find lots of old items, medieval Tudor items. So there were a lot of people around. And we, as I said earlier, had followed the water down. So we were all looking at the water's edge, but it got very crowded. So I walked back up a little bit, and suddenly in all the footprints that had been made, I spotted the rim of, well, I didn't know what it was at the time, a little small semicircular thing sticking out of the mud. And when I pulled it out, lo and behold, it was that tiny bottle. It was amazing.
Yeah, for people listening, it's maybe 2 inches by 1 inch thick. Like
Yeah,
it's a
very,
small
very
little bottle.
wonky, hand blown. It's only got
Kind of a
one tiny
greenish-
little bit out of its out of the neck. Is the rim of the neck has got one tiny little dink. That's all. It's just beautiful, and it would have been used for. Well, an apothecary would have used it for either storing ingredients or selling medicine in back in the 16th, 17th century.
The pharmacists of the day.
Yeah.
It's amazing to me that the rim at the top, because it kind of it goes in and then out again, is almost fully intact. Again, that it hasn't been, there was that tiny bit chipped off, but it's almost fully intact.
Yeah.
And it's kind of this beautiful, is it sort of green
Well,
color
it's
to it?
a green sort of glass, but it's got iridescence on it, which is a chemical reaction that happens when glass has been in the anaerobic mud of the Thames for a long time. It sort of creates this beautiful rainbow colours.
Tell us what the anaerobic mud is. I think Sean's told me about that before, but there's something that helps with preserving objects. Is
It
that
just
true?
means there's no oxygen
Okay.
in there. So even things like leather or paper in some cases are preserved because there's no oxygen there to allow the bacteria to
see.
grow to destroy them.
Well, that actually might take us over nicely to what looks like some sort of body part on the table, Sean. So a body part that maybe was preserved in the anaerobic mud. I don't know. Tell us, what am I looking at here?
So,
Thank you, Angela, for that, by the way. Those are beautiful finds.
Pleasure.
So it's a fun find, and I found it by the Globe Theatre in Southwark, and it was in the anaerobic mud. Just a part of it was sticking out of the mud, and as I pulled it out, it just looked really, really weird. I thought it was a hand at first, but it's made of bone, and it's been in the anaerobic mud for 400 or 500 years. And I showed it to a few mudlarks, and we just didn't have a clue what it was. But it looked so weird. I thought, I'm taking that home. And so in the community, even if we don't know what things are, there is somebody who does. And there's a lady at Norwich Museum who is a bone expert, and I sent her images of it, and it's come back. It's a dog's paw.
Wow.
And from the picture, she said it's medieval, but very interestingly, I call him Yorick, by the way. Alas, poor Yorick. I knew him Horatio because it was by the Globe. And during Yorick's life, either a human or a horse has trod on and broken his paw.
Oh.
But you can see that the bone has fused. So it healed, and he was probably limping around Southwark at the time of Shakespeare. But it's a really cool find.
That's a great find. I love that. You've got maybe the smallest find so far today, next to the paw on the table here. What is this tiny little, looks like a bead that we're looking at?
Yeah, for some reason, I didn't know when I started mudlarking that I absolutely adore beads. And we find beads on the foreshore ranging from all sorts of ages, Romans through to the medieval beads and trade beads, right the way through to 20th century beads. And it's very, very hard to date beads. But this small little bead is 5 millimeters and it's yellow and it's triangular. On each corner, there is a green blob. So it was different to beads that I've found before on the river. And again, we have experts that we talk to. And there is a lady who's just written a book on Anglo-Saxon beads, Sue Heaser. And I sent her images and she's confirmed it is an Anglo-Saxon bead that would have been made between the 4th and 7th century.
Wow.
And they've been found in archaeological digs in a place called Mucking in Essex, in with grave goods. So it was a day when I wasn't really mudlarking. I was in trainers and jeans that day, but I thought I'd go down to the river as most mudlarks do when they're in London, even though they're not dressed for the occasion.
Down.
And it was just sitting in between a bit of barge bed, in between the bits of chalk.
It's amazing to me that you found this on a day that you weren't like on your hands and knees because it's so small.
It is very, very tiny, and it was the yellow colour that I spotted in between the white chalk.
And so that would have been worn on a bit of clothing, or
a decoration jewellery,
wow.
And it's beautiful. And you don't really find much Anglo-Saxon stuff on the river.
Such a range. I mean, I hope the listener is getting a bit of a sense that there is, not just a range of time, 500,000 years old, up to, I'm sure there's lots of present day objects as well that you come across, but also the type of object, from the animal to the hand axe to the bead to the apothecary bottle. It really paints a picture of the life in and around the Thames in a beautiful way. I want to talk just a little bit as we near the end here about how people who don't have a mudlark license but are, intrigued to learn more about it, maybe come to an exhibition, see some of these objects in real life. Before we talk about the exhibitions though, Sean, I know you have and you've mentioned this on the podcast before, but I want to just mention it again for anyone who's listening for the first time. You've found a passion for trade tokens, and now you've done a trade token walk that you've put together. Can you just tell us what a trade token is first, and then maybe a little bit about if you've got any of those walks coming up, or just a little bit about it?
So after the Civil War, there wasn't enough small change. Oliver Cromwell was making small value silver coins, but in no great quantities. When Charles was alive, he was making small copper farthings, but they were worthless after he was executed. So there was no king's prerogative for making coins anymore because there wasn't a king. And Cromwell turned a blind eye. And they started making these beautiful tokens. All the dies were made in the Tower of London Mint, and the coiners or tokeners would travel the country, every street, every village, basically knocking on doors and selling the concept of having their own coin made. And what makes them so special, rather than just a coin with a monarch on it, they actually have the name of the trader on, they have the address where he traded, and there's always an image in the middle of the coin, which would have been his trade or the sign that would have been hanging outside his business. So they was only used between 1648 and 1672, and countrywide there was over 16,000 traders that had them issued. In London alone, there was over 6,500 that had them issued. What makes them special is the find is just the beginning, because I go to the archives like other mudlarks and we start researching the people and finding documents about their lives, birth certificates, wills and death certificates, and try and piece together their life and tell stories of their lives. And what I tried to do, especially when I'd done the walking tour, was take the group to the street, put the token in their hand and say, he held this token here where we're standing. Let me tell you about his life.
I love that. And this could be, candle makers, someone who owns an inn.
Every trade had them.
Wow.
There are tokens. I've got tokens for a soap shop in Leadenhall Market, a white baker, because there was two types of baker, a white baker and a brown baker. And I've got a silk shop. You name the trade and they had them issues. You had to buy the tokens, so you had to have a bit of money behind you to do so. But it's a wonderful window of a period in our history where so much went on. We had the Civil War, we had the Plague, the Great Fire of London, and the Restoration. So these people lived through those times, and finding all the information about their life really does bring them back to life.
And that gives a nice idea for people if they're wondering, okay, you found the object, what next? There's depending on the object, I would imagine, there's a kind of investigative journey that goes into what is it, what's the time period, is there someone connected to it?
So Angela found a wonderful token. And we went to the archives, didn't we?
We did. I can't remember who it was now.
But you found documents with his signature on, didn't you?
It was John Carter. I do remember now you said the word signature. Yeah. He was a grocer, I think, from memory.
Yeah.
But we went to the archives. We found out who he'd married, when he'd lived, all the rest of it. Then we went to Guildhall, didn't we? And looked through the
original books.
Books for what was it? The Company of Grocers.
It was for the Worshipful Company of Grocers.
Yeah.
And basically you had to pay, a bit like being part of a club or something, you had to pay your dues.
Yeah.
And you had to be introduced by somebody.
We went through that page by page, trying to work out a timescale of, how old would you have been? And Angela turned the page and there is his signature.
It was unbelievable. So and I had the token with me, so I just put it next to the signature, knowing that he'd held the token and he'd actually written those words. It was just, we were giggling, weren't we?
Yeah.
It's a real investigative journey. So Sean, you've got this fantastic walking tour where you take people to the different locations of some of these trade tokens. Do you have any schedule coming up, or can they just follow you on Instagram to find out the next one?
Okay, during the month of September, virtually every weekend, via Hands on History Mudlarks, we will be doing exhibitions in certain locations around London. And when we are exhibiting at St Paul's Cathedral, I will be doing a walking tour based on trade tokens, where we're going to walk the streets around St Paul's, looking about what was going on there, talking about the traders that issued tokens in the streets where they lived and traded. Working on it at the moment, we're going to be passing two churches that are in the nursery rhyme Oranges and Lemons, and we're going to hopefully get to St Mary Le Beau for midday so we can hear the bells chime, because I want to talk about true Cockneys.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, that sounds exciting. So people we'll link that all into our show notes, but that's in September. And maybe I'll throw it over to Angela and Sam in terms of just upcoming exhibitions, things that you recommend, ways that people can get involved. Sean just alluded to Hands on History, so we might want to mention what that is. But yeah, what have we got coming up?
Well, the first one is Southwark Cathedral, actually, which isn't Hands on History, but there is one there on the 25th of July, just for a day, so you can go to that one. But the Hands on History ones coming up are at Fulham Pier, which is the 8th of August, at the Guildhall, the Roman Amphitheatre on the 5th and 6th of September, St Paul's on the 19th and 20th of September, and I think there's one at the Docklands Museum of London on the 26th, 27th of September.
Okay, and
Have I
those,
missed any?
other than this other cathedral, those are all the hands-on history ones. So
Hands-on
they can
history,
find that
yeah.
on the website, which we'll link, or on the social media as well.
The Southwark Cathedral one is also a medieval crafts day as well. So the Mudlarks will be exhibiting in the cathedral, and outside you will have people literally can go and watch medieval crafts.
Yeah, it's a really good day actually if you enjoy heritage crafts. They've got, usually they have the spinners, dyers and weavers.
Oh, great.
The City and Guilds College of Art come along and do stone and wood carving, gilding. They had bee skeps, they had herbalism, they had all sorts of stuff last time. It's a really nice immersive way of experiencing and seeing some of those traditional crafts that are being kept alive. A lot of them are really endangered crafts. I mean, as a craftsperson myself, it's just a joy to see these fantastic things being made and these crafts being kept alive. And actually, last time the exhibition was at Southwark, I remember watching the spinners, weavers and dyers, and they were spinning wool from scratch using a drop spindle, which has a spindle whorl on it. And the spindle whorl that they were using was a tiny little rare and stoneware one. So from the 1600s, I've actually found one in the river, and it's myself, and it's on the finds database. And I asked about it, and it turned out that the spindle whorl had been loaned to them by our finds liaison officer who was inside exhibiting. And at the end of the day, they returned the spindle whorl to him along with a batch of wool, which he now shows at his exhibitions alongside the spindle whorl. So it just kind of nicely brings everything together.
Well, yeah, I love it. This just, all of this really reminds me of what I love about London. You can scratch the surface of these interests, hobbies, passions, areas that you might look into, historical or otherwise, crafts like we're talking about, and there's a whole world that you don't even know exists. This is what I love about it. So I encourage people who are listening to check all of those out. It sounds fantastic. Well, Sean Clark, Sam Caetoven, and Angela Bridge, thank you so much for joining us on The Big Smoke. Well, that's today's episode. I hope you enjoyed our special peek beneath the mud. If you'd like to learn more about mudlarking or revisit objects we've talked about on the podcast, you'll find links in the show notes. And remember, history isn't only found in museums or behind glass. Sometimes it's hidden in the mud, waiting patiently for the tide to go out, and we'll keep uncovering those stories together. Or perhaps simply letting them find us, here in the Big Smoke.